So, I couldn't exactly figure out how to do the podcast stuff. I suck with technology. I still only use a PlayStation 2, so yeah, I'm just gonna record my voice, which I know probably sounds like a teenager who just hit puberty. I'm very much aware of what my voice sounds like, and teach you guys stuff. Um, so, as a personal trainer, I have found that 90% of my clients had one of two goals. Either they wanted to get smaller or they wanted to get bigger. Um, and today I'm going to focus on the ones who wanted to get bigger. Mostly men, but sometimes there were females. Um, because there's a lot of things that are often neglected in a hypertrophy program. And by hypertrophy, I mean muscle growth. There are different types of hypertrophy. There's myofibrillar hypertrophy, which means the increase in muscle fiber size. And then you have sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which is the increase in the cell volume within the muscle. But in general, when I say hypertrophy, I'm referring to muscle growth. Now, if you go into a gym and a trainer gives you a hypertrophy program, it's always going to look like the following. 99% of the time, it's going to be okay. Here's a list of exercises, and here's the number of sets, and here's the number of reps. And I'm sorry, but that doesn't really get you anywhere. That is a bare minimum outline of what you should be doing. There's a lot of aspects that are neglected in a program like that. I'll give you a basic example. Let's just say a shoulder day. Almost always looks like one of the following. You do start off with a shoulder press of some sort, either overhead barbell or maybe seated dumbbell, and then you progress into your isolations. Some front raises, lateral raises, maybe some rear delt flies, and for the rest of your life, you're probably going to be doing some variation of that. And it's not that it's wrong; it's just that there's a lot of things that are neglected in a program like that. Uh, and so today I'm going to cover what I believe, from my observations, the top 5 things that are missing are. Now, before I begin, I do want to say this. If you are defining your goal as getting bigger, make sure you are distinguishing between getting bigger and being stronger, because there's a big difference between the two. Just like there's a big difference between, say, losing weight and getting toned. There's a big difference between the two. And it's not that the two are mutually exclusive. You can do both. You can get stronger and get bigger. But training optimally for your goal depends on defining clearly what your goal is. And let me give you an example. How many times do you go on into a gym on a Monday, which is International Chest Day, and you see guys who claim to be bulking doing very, very heavy bench pressing, uh, and their chests never grow. Their bench press gets stronger, but there's a difference between having a strong bench press and having a big chest. So if you say that your goal is to get bigger, then that is what you should be training for. Now you can get a bigger bench press. The two go hand in hand at some point, but training optimally for your goal depends on defining exactly what your goal is. So, that said, let me start with number 5. And this is going to go like in a ranking. Uh, as I go from 5 to 1, 5 is something that you would probably think of before you thought of number 4, and 4 is something you probably thought of before number 3, and then like as it goes down the list, it becomes more and more obscure. So number 5, form. I mean, it almost goes without saying, but it, if you could take one important lesson out of this whole podcast, or whatever you'd call this, to to work a muscle effectively, you've got to perform the function that muscle was anatomically meant to do. Let me say that again. To work a muscle effectively, you've got to perform the function that muscle was anatomically meant to do. So if you're in the gym and you're swinging bicep curls, you're not going to build your biceps. I see guys in there throwing up 50-pound dumbbells who have biceps the size of girls. And that's, not to insult girls or anything. I'm just saying that you're claiming you want bigger arms, but you refuse to do the exercise properly. Now you look at a guy like Kai Green. If you don't know who Kai Green is, Google him. Huge arms. And he will be the first to tell you he never goes above 35 pounds on a bicep curl, a dumbbell bicep curl. And in his own words, not mine, I'm a bodybuilder, not a weightlifter, not a power lifter. I specialize in the art of adding muscle mass. And to add muscle mass, I have to do what the muscle was meant to do. He's a big advocate of the mind-muscle connection. All right? What that means is he's able to activate a muscle on command, basically. He knows how to activate a muscle without even really trying. And that is what you should be striving to do. What a lot of people don't realize is that every exercise, every rep has 3 portions. And so many people only train one portion. You have the eccentric part of the movement, which is where your muscles are lengthening or stretching. You have the isometric portion, which is where your muscles are exerting force without lengthening or contracting at all. And then you have the concentric part of the movement, which is where your muscles shorten, thereby causing force. So, for example, with a bench press, the eccentric is the lowering of the bar. The isometric is the part where you pause it on your chest. And the concentric is where you push up. And everyone trains the concentric, no problem. But how many guys do you see bouncing? They bounce the bar off their chest. They're not getting the isometric contraction. How many guys do you see just basically let the bar fall, and so therefore they're not even really focusing on the eccentric portion? Again, all 3 of these constitute 1 rep. All 3 of these are involved in the muscle performing the function that the muscle was meant to do. So if you're neglecting any one of those 3, you're not going to get the most out of the lift. If you are doing a bicep curl, and everyone focuses on that squeeze, everyone loves to get that pump, but then they let the dumbbell fall without really controlling it. Okay, well, you just really neglected that eccentric portion again. You're not going to get the most out of that exercise. So form above weight. If you have to swing a weight or you have to bounce a weight, then you're going too heavy. And again, here's one thing that I've never really been able to understand. Again, you say you're getting bigger. You say you want to get bigger. And so many people train their biceps for a pump. But yes, so many train their bench press heavy. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong. There's actually some logic to it. But the average gym goer doesn't know that logic. So my question to you is, if you're one of the people who do that, your goal is to grow muscle. So why would you train 2 different body parts in 2 different ways but expect the same physiological response? Now granted, again, I said that there is some logic to it. One is a compound movement, the other one's an isolation, which means that, isolation should be heavier rep. But I never really see people who they do have, high reps on any form of chest movement. It's almost always just heavy benching. You have to think about that. But that's going off on a bit of a tangent. So again, form. Focus on form. Remember that each part of the movement matters for overall muscular development. Eccentric, concentric, and isometric. Make sure you're doing all 3. All right, number 4. Angles. A lot of people, and mostly newbies or beginners, they focus on, basically broad range exercises. So they'll do a flat barbell bench press or a barbell curl or, stuff like that. And they don't realize that just by changing the angle of maybe your hands or your feet or the bench or things like that you can work different muscles in more effective ways. And in fact, for overall muscular development, you should be changing the angles up pretty frequently. So, like, instead of starting with a flat barbell bench press, start with incline or decline. Change the position of your hands to work different parts of the pec. even something as simple as, say, a calf raise. If you're having trouble growing your calves or a certain part of your calves, just changing the angle of your feet changes that. And I could sit here and talk for an hour, giving you example after example, but it's just something that you learn over time. But just think about it. Focus on switching up the angles of your exercises pretty often. All right, number 3. And this one is one of my favorites, volume. So many people get stuck in the whole 3 sets of 10 fiasco. Oh, how many sets, how many reps we're doing? Oh, let's do 3 sets of 10. And it's not that that's wrong. It's just that, look at it like this, okay? First of all, let me say this. When you're doing exercises with weight training, you're not building muscle. You are breaking muscle down, and your body's response is to build itself back up. That is what happens when you lift weights. Again, everything that you do to your body's going to have a response for. So you have to think about, what is my body's response to this going to be? And so it makes sense then that the more volume that you do, the more you're going to break down that muscle, which means the more your body's going to have to build it back up. Now, what do I mean by volume? Well, what does volume mean in geometry? It's how much is inside of something, right? It's length times width times height. Same thing here. Your volume is your weight times your reps times your sets. So if you do 3 sets of 10 bench press at 100 pounds, you did 3,000 pounds of work. 3,000 pounds of volume. Sorry about that. So if, suppose, instead of doing 3 sets of 10 at 100 pounds, and I'm just giving an example for the sake of easy math. Suppose you drop the weight just a little bit. You do 10 sets of 10 at 75 pounds. So that's 7,500 pounds of work. That's 2.5 times the amount of work, which means you really, really, really broke the muscles down a lot more. And what's the response going to be? Your muscles are going to build it back even more than they did before. I will say this, as a personal example, 11 months out of the year, I don't give a shit what I look like. I primarily identify as a power lifter. I don't really care if I have big, bulging, biceps. I'll still train biceps every week, but, I would rather have a 500-pound bench press, which I do, by the way, than have a six-pack or 23-inch arms, which I'm close to, by the way, but... But 1 month out of the year, which is October, and people on my Facebook know this, I like to dress up as the Hulk. And by dress up, I mean basically wearing a tank top around with my skin painted green to look like the Hulk. And to do that, I need to add a lot of muscle mass. And I have found from experience that when I start doing more German volume training, the mass just comes, and it comes so quickly. A lot of people find it hard to believe how much mass I'm able to put on when I'm doing German volume training. I remember having a conversation with another trainer once, and I told her, yeah, like last October, I put on 15 pounds, of weight. And she says, well, I don't believe you. It couldn't have been all muscle. Granted, hey, maybe it wasn't all muscle, but it was still a crap ton of mass that I was able to put on in a month. And it's not like I was dirty bulking or anything like that. I mean, it was completely clean eating. But it was just 10 sets of 10 of every exercise, and I would do this like every day for a month. Now, granted, that was a bad idea. My joints gave out after a while. Tendinitis is a bitch. Let me just say that. The more volume you do, the more stress there is on your joints. So it's something that I've learned maybe do once a month. If you're going to do a high volume day per body part, do it once a month. But definitely, if you're at a plateau, if you can't grow a muscle, if you're having a hard time, shock the muscle, add in some volume, 10 sets of 10 of a compound movement, hell, throw in some of the isolations too. I did, and it worked fantastically, especially if you're stuck, during that, sets of 12 to 15 thing. Just add in more volume. So that was number 3. Number 2, and this is one that I've become very, very familiar with as of late, It's one of the ones that even I didn't really think of at first. And ever since I've been incorporating this type of training, it has dramatically increased my results. And that is the concept of time under tension. So, as opposed to just, okay, sets and reps and all that stuff, it would make sense. Again, let me repeat myself, that when you do an exercise, you are not building muscle, you are breaking the muscle down. And it would make sense that if you're doing a rep, the longer that your muscle is under tension for that rep, or even that set, overall, the longer that your muscle is under tension, the more that muscle is going to break down. So instead of just performing the movement, instead of just, even if you're using proper form, which was part number 5, even if you're doing all 3 parts of the movement correctly, you might be doing it too fast. So there's different ways of incorporating more time under tension. You could do it with sets, you could do it with reps. And let me give you an example of some of these. So, let's talk about reps, all right? Remember I talked about the eccentric part of the movement, meaning it's the part where your muscle is lengthening. It's the lowering of the bar during a bench press, for example. Instead of just lowering the bar, even if you're lowering it with control, just slow it down. Slow it down. Lower for 4, 5, 6 seconds. Pause at the bottom before exploding up. And you'll find that, yeah, you won't be able to go as heavy with something like that. But you're, number one, when you lengthen the eccentric portion of the lift, the time that your muscle's under tension, you are building muscular control throughout the range of motion for that lift. So for people who, for example, have a hard time progressing on their bench press, so this works for strength too. And don't get me wrong, this isn't just for bodybuilding. This is an amazing powerlifting technique. If you are having a hard time progressing on something, it may just be that your muscular control during the range of motion is simply not there. And by really taking your time during that eccentric part of the movement, you are building that muscular control throughout the portion of the lift, as well as breaking that muscle down. There are several exercises I have found per body part that work better than others for this. So, for example, for chest, if you're looking to really build your chest, do an incline dumbbell bench, but do it with a 4-second eccentric movement. Do it maybe, anywhere between 8 and 12 reps, maybe 2 or 3 sets. Excellent mass builder for the chest. In terms of, let's just say, biceps, take an incline bench, put it at about maybe a 60-degree angle, and do a single arm preacher curl. But lower the curl, lower your arm for 4 seconds before pausing and coming back up. And another thing too with that is, don't fully lengthen the arm. A lot of people, they make that mistake with curls. They let their arm hang at the bottom of the movement, and when you do that, you shift the tension from your biceps to the elbow. So if you really want to keep the tension in the bicep, then do not fully lock out the arm. But that is my favorite mass builder for the biceps. You could do this with like anything. Like if you're having a hard time with progressing on squats, squat 6 seconds. Take your time. Pause at the bottom. And that's another thing too, is the isometric portion as well. You can increase the time under tension by also focusing on the isometric portion of the lift. With the isometric portion, you are generating force without contracting or lengthening the muscle. And that's really a hard concept to understand sometimes, but it's an amazing mass builder. Like another great bicep exercise. You turn the J hooks of a power cage upside down, and you put them right at elbow length. Do a bicep curl with a straight bar, nothing on the bar, just an empty bar, into the J hooks, and try to pull the bar through the J hooks for 5 seconds. That is called an overcoming isometric exercise. You're trying to move an immovable force, and you're exerting a tremendous amount of effort for a lot longer than you would a normal bicep curl. You're literally holding that isometric movement for 5 seconds, as opposed to Swinging the bar up, letting it come down. Awesome for training muscular control, awesome for breaking down the muscle, and there's not really an impact on the joints with that because your joint isn't doing any movement. Another good way of increasing the time under tension is by doing time sets. I was experimenting quite a bit this week with time sets, and I have to say they're pretty brutal. And what I mean by that is instead of just doing, let's do 12 reps or let's do 15 reps or whatever it is. Do sets for time instead of counting the reps. So like we did for arms yesterday, we did the preacher curl machine, but we put it on like the second lowest weight. It was only like 20 pounds. But we pumped out reps for 1 minute straight. And I have to say that was brutal. Like, your biceps are literally under tension for a minute straight. And it's just brutal. The pump is insane. And you do that a couple times. Now, I said earlier that certain body parts respond better to certain volumes than other body parts do. And I'll give you an example of one of the best areas where this has worked. This time under tension, the time set, your soleus muscle. Your soleus muscle, which is underneath the gastrocnemius, it's your calf muscle. This is the part of the calf that is activated when your knee is bent. So like imagine the seated calf press machine where your knees are bent. Instead of putting any weight on it and do it, like I see guys putting 4 plates on that thing. And they do like maybe 5-6 reps. And they have shitty calves. And not to brag, but I have pretty awesome, like pretty huge calves. Anyone who's on my Facebook has seen a picture of it. The best way to train the soleus muscle, because it is a slow twitch muscle fiber, is those time sets. So don't even put any weight on the calf press machine at first. Just literally pump out reps for a minute straight. The burn is going to be insane. The soleus is going to grow a lot more than putting 4 plates on the damn thing. It's just a newer method. But not really a newer method. It's just one that you've probably never seen before. And it works. And anytime that you're stuck, anytime that you're at a plateau, try that. Like, you could do it literally with anything. Just lower the weight to almost nothing and just pump out reps for a minute, minute and a half. Hell, if you want to go 2 minutes, do 2 minutes, you know. But it increases the time under tension, which therefore breaks the muscle down even more. Got it? Good. Now, number 1. What is the number 1 key to muscle growth, whether overlooked or not? It is not the time under tension, not the volume, not the form, not the angle, not the reps, not the sets. Actually, it's kind of a little bit of everything, isn't it? It's the number 1 key to muscle growth is variety. If you constantly place the same demands on your body over and over again, what reason are you giving your body to grow? Like, seriously ask yourself, if you're doing chest and you're always starting with the barbell bench press, no matter how heavy you're going, no matter how stronger you're getting, when are you giving your body a reason to grow? You're not. Plain and simple, you're not. If you always do the same tricep routine, you always do the same back routine, you always do the same leg routine, what reason are you giving your body to grow? Your body is already used to that stressor. You're doing the same exercises with the same rep schemes, the same order of exercises, the same angles. The only thing you're changing is the weights. So in other words, you're training for strength and not size. Like, literally, think about that. You're not changing the order of the exercises. You're not changing the rep schemes, the number of sets. The only thing you're changing week to week is how much weight you use on the exercises. So really, you're training strength and not size. And again, there's a big difference between the two. Let me steal a quote from Arnold here. You have to shock the muscle. If you would normally start a chest routine with a bench press, dude, next week start off with, incline dumbbell press or even a pec fly, I don't care. But do something different every single time you train a body part, or your body part's never gonna grow. I don't know how many times I get guys coming up to me and they say, "Man, I could bang out the 60s on these dumbbell curls and my biceps won't grow." Okay, well, what are you doing different than you did last week? Dude, I can bench 4 plates, but my chest won't grow. Okay, what are you doing differently? What reason are you giving your chest to grow other than getting stronger? You're not. Some people, they love to stick to free weights, and yes, free weights are the superior method for performance. They train the stabilizer muscles. They are overall the best strength builders. But suppose you're always doing free weights. Now, suppose you take a week and instead of doing free weights, you just do machines. And you might say, "Oh, that's too easy. That's not going to do anything for me." No, seriously. Your body's used to the free weights and not the machines. So by changing something just as simple as that up, and I'm not saying go and drop all the free weights and just do machines, but I'm giving an example. And I've seen this work for people. And their muscles grow because their body was not used to it. When your body gets used to something, it's not going to grow. You said your goal is bulking. Okay, let's bulk up. Give it a reason to bulk up. If you're not giving it a reason to, it's never going to. Cable exercise is another great way to throw it in. Changing up the rep schemes. Doing the time under tension stuff. That's changing it up because you don't normally do it. Changing the volume. That's something you don't normally change up. Change it up. The exercises. If you do push-ups one week, try plyometric push-ups the next week. Try diamond push-ups the next week. If you do pull-ups one week, do neutral grip pull-ups the next week. Do them with a weight vest. Do chin-ups, If you normally start a back routine with deadlifts, you know what? Next week, save deadlifts for last. And that may sound a little weird. Here's a method that I've found to grow my legs. We always start with squats or leg presses. 1 week, do all of your isolation work first. Do the leg extensions, do the leg curls, do the Bulgarian half, the Bulgarian squats and the hip adductors, hip abductors, all those exercises, do them first. And then save the leg press or squats for last. Your legs are going to have to work that much harder because you've already pre-exhausted your legs. And guess what? That's not something that you normally do. So what's going to happen? Your legs are going to grow because you placed them under a stress that they were not used to. Variety. Constantly switch it up. If I ask you what your workout routine looks like, you should respond with the following. I don't have a routine. Because you switch it up every week. Because you're constantly tricking the muscle. So, variety, time under tension, volume, angles, and form. Start thinking about those 5, and I guarantee your bulking program, your hypertrophy program gets a jump start.